going into specific details, we've had several. Well, we just had one actually where I believe that her in early intervention in a deputy's issues have basically saved their career. So and she's working through one right now. And that's priceless basically, and also from a cost standpoint, for all the money that goes into training and everything, and she can help these people work through these issues. And it has helped and it has worked. So I'm just asking to renew the contract. And then I worked with Mr. Anderson. I think we're going to do, instead of doing this every single year, just automatic renewals for 2 years, if that's acceptable to the commissioners. So that's it, unless there's any questions about it.
You've got it within your budget.
Yeah, it's budgeted. I actually budgeted for the increased cost this year. So.
Sounds good.
Yep.
Yeah,
Awesome.
it's a great program. So
It's been fantastic.
Commissioner Jordan.
Just a quick question, looking at her materials, it talks about that she's a mental health provider and consultant with the peer support team. Is that a team within the sheriff's office? I was just curious about that piece.
Yeah, the peer support team it's a legislatively recognized team. All of the deputies and the members of the peer support team have to go through peer training, and then they become certified to do it. And so they are a response team within the sheriff's office that responds to critical incidents and helps deputies who are involved in these critical incidents work through it. And they have confidentiality and privileged communication, that kind of stuff. So she is their consultant on that team, and so she helps them work through that.
Perfect. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. And that's next. It's going to take us to Megan. Oh, nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Thank you. Megan Duval, Historic Preservation Officer for the City of Spokane as well as unincorporated county. And hopefully now starting to get some of these interlocal agreements going with some of these local small communities within the county to provide preservation services. So I'm not going to steal any thunder because Logan did all of the work on this interlocal with Medical Lake. You built the relationships. I think you worked with Chris as well. On the agreement. And so Logan Camporeale, I'll let him do the presentation.
Good morning, commissioners. Thanks for your time this morning. I'll try to be pretty quick and happy to answer any questions after. Like Megan said, we've been trying to work on signing an interlocal agreement with the city of Medical Lake. And we'll just dive right in. Next slide, Gina, please. Why an interlocal agreement? The Spokane Historic Preservation Office provides historic preservation services within the incorporated city of Spokane, as well as unincorporated Spokane County. Services in the county are provided pursuant to an ILA between the city and the county, a separate ILA. The ILA between the city and the county instructs our office to pursue and sign additional ILAs with small incorporated places in the county. We previously signed one with Fairfield in 2016, but haven't had a lot of success getting some other ILAs signed, but finally broke some ground in Medical Lake, and so we're excited about that. Next slide, please. The process for getting this off the ground has really just started with a connection with the city. I think, as we all recognize, the city of Medical Lake is in a pivotal moment in their history, maybe the most pivotal, having suffered a pretty dramatic fire last year that changed the course of the city and destroyed a lot of buildings. And the city staff and leadership are thinking about ways to leverage that tragedy and turn it into growth and positive things for the city of Medical Lake. In December of 2023, I had a meeting with Mayor Cooper, and she expressed an interest in having historic preservation services in the city of Medical Lake. And so we followed that up with a workshop for the Medical Lake City Council in February. Worked closely with Mr. Anderson on how to develop an interlocal agreement that would fit this, mostly based on the Fairfield interlocal agreement. And in April of this year, we had a second workshop really looking at that ILA. And in May, the Medical Lake City Council unanimously passed their own historic preservation ordinance, which is a requirement of the ILA. And then just last month, I think on the 18th, the City Council unanimously passed a resolution authorizing the mayor to sign the ILA. Next slide, please. So how will the interlocal agreement work? Basically, there's 3 steps. The first step is to pass the historic preservation ordinance for the city. And like I said, they completed that in May. They basically adopted the county's ordinance by reference. So it's really nice that if the county ever updates its ordinance, Medical Lakes will update in kind. And so that's really convenient. The second step is to sign the interlocal agreement. Medical Lake has signed their piece. We're ready to sign our piece. And so the final step is for the county Board of County Commissioners to authorize signing and ultimately sign the agreement. After that, our office will be able to begin providing services, including hearing nominations. Currently, we couldn't list the building on the historic register if it's in the city limits. Now we will be able to do that. And importantly, we'll be able to provide tax incentives to those property owners if they make a significant rehabilitation of their property. And we already have one property owner who's eager to do that with one of their downtown properties, and so that's exciting. Next slide, please. We also want to leverage this. We created an interlocal agreement in Fairfield in 2016, but it didn't really go anywhere. We haven't had any buildings listed in Fairfield, and maybe that's some of that is our fault, but we don't want to make that mistake this time. And so we requested some grant funding from the state, some federal pass-through money that would allow us to do sort of a deep dive on Medical Lake history and also nominate one property, the property that I mentioned where the property owner is eager to redevelop this building on in the photo here and ultimately hopefully take advantage of the tax incentives. We'll also sort of set the stage with the document. It will make it easier for other property owners to do the same thing, so that the lift to nominate your property and get it listed will be lower. Next slide, please. And just a reminder that just the Spokane Register of Historic Places, owner consent is required for listing a property. There's some concern that, we're going to walk around and be like, oh, that's historic. That's historic. It's not how it works. Property owners have to initiate this process and they have to consent to it. Properties that are 50 years old or older meet the criteria, which we have some criteria in the ordinance. And then all properties on the register are eligible for incentives. And the way that we keep properties looking historic is by reviewing changes to the exterior. We don't care what you do on the inside of your historic property, but we'll review changes to the exterior to make sure it continues to reflect its historic character. Next slide, please. So just the takeaways here, a local historic preservation program can be a catalyst for sparking investment in historic properties. And I think Mayor Cooper and the city council recognize that and want to take advantage of that. Historic preservation can also help protect the community's identity and character. Something else that Medical Lake is coping with, trying to have that firm identity that they can cling to and leverage for tourism and other purposes. An interlocal agreement will provide access to those preservation services, as well as allowing for the incentives to be used. And just lastly, each individual community knows what's worth protecting on the local level. And so it's exciting to see Medical Lake want to be proactive in saving their historic resources. And we're excited to be just a small part of that. Next slide. I think that was it. I'm happy to take any questions if anybody has it.
So what was the impetus that started the relationship between you and Medical Lake?
Yeah, last year I think it was you, Commissioner French, who reached out first. There's a theater property on Eastern State Hospital's site, which is all within the city of Medical Lake. And it's a really cool, it was a theater originally designed to provide opportunities to perform, but also entertainment for the residents who lived at the hospital. But it really turned into a community theater in the 40s and 50s. But unfortunately, for about the last 3 decades, it's been sitting vacant. And unfortunately, the state has sort of earmarked it for demolition. But there really isn't a lot that we can do. We tried to communicate with the state and tried to get them to think about rethinking the purpose of that property. And we applied for a grant, which we unfortunately did not get. But it still got the wheels spinning and it got Mayor Cooper thinking about historic preservation. And so it was a really good, even though that grant didn't bear fruit, it was a really good avenue to get the community thinking about historic preservation. And ultimately, I don't think the theater is off the table. Now, if somebody did want to pursue doing something with the theater, especially if it was like a community organization, we could offer incentives to them in that process. So maybe it's not the exact route we thought we were on, but I think there's still a chance for the theater. There's also some hoops that the state would have to jump through to demolish it, and so we will lean on those if they ever start to push in that direction. It's a really cool building and designed by one of our notable architects, Julius Sill.
It's almost like Fox Theater reduced. It's a little bit smaller than the Fox Theater, but it's got that same kind of architectural character and flavor to it. It's really, it's a great asset. It's got a lot of, the bones of the building are really, really good. So it just needs some TLC, but might be something we want to consider as our state package, as you said. We need some help from the state because the state owns it. So.
Yeah, or it could be if Nick from the spokesman to write an article about it to bring some awareness to it.
Sure.
Community members want to get out there and contribute.
Sure, that's a good idea, actually.
And I think we've watched also, Northern State Hospital is basically empty, and there's amazing buildings at Eastern State Hospital as well. And I know a lot of them are starting to get less and less used. And so I think the fact that the city owns that land and gave it away to the state, there may be an interest at some point of taking back some of that property. So anyway, I think this is good. Yeah.
Mayor Cooper's talked a lot about that they've been in discussions with the state about, the state didn't use a lot of the property that was gifted to them by the city. And so how can we reimagine all that sort of empty property? And so, hopeful that the theater is not, it will not be demolished, first of all, and that it could have the mayor sees it as maybe this really crucial community space that also could connect the hospital and the community in a more meaningful way. So would be really cool.
And there's that, and then also Eastern is considering as part of their theatrical department, being able to use the theater facility and stuff. So there's another potential user for it. But and then I have reached out to Friends of the Fox to see if they might be interested in another campaign. So more to come on that.
If we could get an article in the paper, that would be.
Yeah, I think maybe we would do a press release after this ILA is signed, which would be maybe a good opportunity to kind of facilitate that conversation with the reporter and maybe get some press on the theater as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay,
And
well,
you'll see more of us this year because it's our annual, or not annual, it's our year to relook at our agreement between the city and the county for preservation services. So we'll be back probably before too long and talking with you as well, Mr. Luckily, Jim Amacio set everything up pretty well, so we're just plugging in some numbers. So we'll see you soon enough. All right, thank you so much.
And I just want to thank you so much for your help, Ms.
Yeah.
Anderson. It was critical to getting across the finish line, so thank you.
thank you, Logan.
Have a good day, everyone.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chief Cooper, and you introduce everybody.
I think everybody knows Bryce Miller, and this is our new training sergeant, Sergeant Cam Karowski. So I think our first one is a new contract with the US Marshals, a new daily rate. Been working on it for quite a while, been working on it most of the year. We're going up from $122 a day to $155 a day daily rate. Increased revenue with our current population, about $800,000 increased revenue from the US Marshals. So good thing, contract's been through legal, been through risk. We agree with everything else. So, and it's quite a process to negotiate daily rate with them versus a lot of our other agencies. They take out outside medical, because they take care of their outside medical and they take care of their own transfers. So it's a little less than our daily rate for other customers.
So you said 155.
155,
What's our daily rate for?
177 for City Spokane, et cetera.
That was the 23 at your end.
And we just recently it was going to bring in about 1.1 million, but we've had to reduce the partial population. US Marshals, Director Sparber was here maybe a month ago. We dropped it down to 65, so. And we're down below that now. We're running about 50 right now. They just dropped it even.
So are they dropping it or?
They are. We asked them to bring it to 65, but I think they've moved prisoners to some of the other agencies, so. Yeah, so they're running about 51 as of yesterday, I believe. That'll be about a $600,000 a year increase over what it would have been.
Commissioner Waldron, and then I'll go to Commissioner Jordan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So just to clarify, so what you're saying is for these federal prisoners, they do not use any of our medical services.
They don't use outside medical, so they have to go to outside medical appointments, emergency rooms, doctor visits outside. They do use our internal visit, so day-to-day pill pass and mental health services and everything inside the facility, they do use that. So
Okay,
day-to-day, yes, outside, no.
so this contract covers those costs.
Correct.
And then you said that they provide their own transport.
They do. They pick their people up every morning and bring them to federal court. They bring them all throughout the state to other agencies as well.
Commissioner Jordan.
Does the contract speak to some of the capacity issues you were talking about in terms of who decides how many can be in, if we need to lower, allow it to be increased? Is that spoken to in the contract, or how does that work?
It doesn't, there's no guarantee. It's based on available bed space. So theoretically, even with the contract, prior contract and this contract, we could tell them tomorrow, we can bring it down to 5 tomorrow if we needed to, or we could give them, unlimited capacity. It's based on available bed space.
Thank you.
Questions or concerns?
Okay, well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next issue, I'm gonna have Sergeant Krosky present. It's software for our background investigations, so. We've got some flyers, but I think it's also
Yeah,
on.
it should have been a PowerPoint that everybody received, so we have some printouts just for easier access to look at, so you don't have to toggle back and forth between two different programs. So with it, we are requesting a contract for approval with a new software called eSoft. It's a program that will streamline our ability to get backgrounds done in a more timely fashion, allow for the data to be saved in a more secure location. Currently, we have one background investigator that's doing all of our main work for backgrounds, and that's all done on paper. So from the time that we get an applicant in the door, and we do our initial with them, it's all done on paper. And we're having to store that paper, and at the completion of a background investigation, if we hire somebody or we don't, we're looking anywhere between 300 and 500 pieces of paper just for that one individual. And currently it's taken anywhere between 3 to 4 months to complete those background investigations. With the use of the new software, eSoft, was brought to our attention by the Sheriff's Office. They're currently using this program. It allows for an improved efficiency. It's streamlined, it's done online, and it's saved, all of our data is saved in a secure location with them on their network. Also, with that use of their network, we can share information with other agencies a lot quicker. So now for us, if we need to get information from an agency, we are relying on strictly just reaching out to them. And we have to elicit that face-to-face contact or, through phone, email. With this, eSoft allows us to set up a timeline, so we can send an email and it sends an automatic email if we don't have a response. And then that information is, from those other agencies is put into our applicant's background on the online system. With cost savings right now, in additional overtime just for the completion of backgrounds, our background investigator, John Matson, has had to put an additional, was approximately 86 hours just in the last 6 months to complete backgrounds for sending out law enforcement requests, the investigations of social media, neighborhood contacts, visiting of homes. And with this program, it'll allow that to be done a lot faster. eSoft has a mechanism within their software that can do social media reviews. And also for us, when we need personal references, the applicant is inputting all the information into the eSoft. So we send them a link, they update all the information that we need. And in that process for them, it verifies emails are current, addresses are correct with the software verifying with their domains and then also with the addresses being correct. And at the completion of that, it puts it in a portal for our background investigator. And if we get to that reference point, we hit one button and it allows us to send those mass emails versus currently we have to do an individual email for each thing that we're sending out. And also with our agency requests for seeing if they've had any law enforcement contacts wherever they've lived across the United States. This program pulls that information into one database. We can hit that one button again. It allows us to send that mass law enforcement request out so we can get that information. With this, looking currently at that 3 to 4 months, we have a breakdown in the little PowerPoint here of how much time is spent on each. From personal history review, we're looking at an hour to 2 hours, background interview, 3 to 5 hours. Just on law enforcement criminal history checks with DOL and so on, 1 to 2 hours. Employer contacts, if we're lucky, 2 to 4 hours. References, this let's say is a small number here at 1 to 2, with the amount of references that we're asking for. And then social media takes a lot of time, us having to jump back between all the social media platforms that are there. This allows the software to do it all for us and creates a report. And then credit reports done on the same thing. Currently, we're having to use a separate agency to create get credit reports to us. ESOF does that all in one platform versus now us having to use Acronet to complete that. And then residence check, just all the information allowing us to quickly input data into that system is going to help us streamline hiring. And with it, we're competing against everybody else. We do have a fairly quick hiring process, but this will allow us to increase that time, which will allow us to then get applicants through the door so that we can fill our numbers quickly. And then with our initial cost to the detention services budget, we're looking at a start of just over $7,600, and that will decrease after the first year because the first year includes a $1,800 setup fee to get us into the program. And with the numbers that are on here, we added some additional numbers so that if we have a bigger year, that we have enough entries. Each person is at 1 entry. You'll see 75. That's for potentially of us processing 75. If we don't have 75 that we process in 1 year, we're allowed to save those entries and use those in the next year and so on and so on.
Any questions?
I think it sounds like it's a pretty good program and you're like.
Anything to save a month off of the background, so we can, and that includes everything. That's medical, physical, psychological test, everything. It's anything, if we can cut 2 weeks off and getting somebody on that line that much faster, 2 weeks of overtime.
So how are you doing for the positions right now?
It's slow and we're moving forward. Like I said, about a year ago, we had 35 vacancies in CO, and this year we have 20 or 25 vacancies in CO. So, keeping up with retirements and everything else. So we're heading in the right direction. We're hiring to July 21st, I think. Now we started with a group of 5, I believe, but the sheriff's office is taking 1 out of that group before we even got them. And then when one went to another agency like Louis or something. Those are things we're fighting for every single group. So we're in there with 2 groups.
So the sheriff's office, how long have they been using this program?
I believe it. At least a year. I believe it's more than that.
They think it's worked well for them too.
Yeah, the amount, it's sped up their backgrounds, and just the information they're able to gather is more than it had been before.
We had 2 background investigators at one time. Actually, years ago, we had 3 background investigators to keep up with hiring, but just numbers didn't dictate. We cut some of the specialty positions just due to staff shortages needed in custody. And we're just on the verge of, at some point, we may have to focus on background investigator again. So I hope that'd be a good problem to have, but we're just on the verge of, we've still been handling one.
So with this, that will help. You only have 1 person
Sure.
doing that, but this would help speed things along and make their life a little.
Make him more
better.
efficient. Yeah, he was coming in on every Friday for a long time. You're gonna kill yourself. Don't do it. You're gonna
That's good.
pace yourself. So. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Take us to Kevin Norris. Is he coming in? Keep everyone moving. Good morning. I'm gonna let you go ahead and get started.
Okay, let's get started. With me today is Justin Roach, SecOps Manager, and Sean Mitrovich, Assistant Director. I want to talk today about two policy updates. One is an amendment to County Policy 725, computer use policy, to add one device language into that. And then a new policy that we want to add to the county procedures and policy manual for generative artificial intelligence acceptable use. So we'll talk first about our amendment to County Policy 725. We recommend a policy amendment for one device language to the current policy. The proposed policy amendment has been highlighted in your packets. We've talked about this multiple times, that want to move to a one device policy for multiple reasons, cost savings. I put in here up to 400K, but that could be much higher if you think that a computer is worth, is $1,000. We currently have, I think, 800 plus people in the county that have multiple devices. If we got everyone to move to a single device, that'd save us $800,000. At $1,000 a device, we won't get to that because there are exceptions to this, but the savings could be dramatic, and also the reduction of technical support for that much fewer devices would provide our techs with less devices they have to maintain, which would be a great thing. Also, we do accommodate in this policy for reasonable exceptions. Reasonable exceptions there are several. One being a person might need 2 laptops for test systems, like in IT. A lot of our staff have a second device, and then around the county, there's reasons to have multiple devices as well. I can think in the sheriff's office, they have separate devices for separate types of testing that they may have to do. The one device policy does read that it's up to the elected official of the department or the CEO to determine that a second device is appropriate, and that the second device is paid for out of the department's M&O fund. Any questions regarding our one device policy that we want to, the code that we want to add into the policy?
So if you're an employee that, has a split environment where you're working part-time at home and part-time in the office, is it then the intent that in the office, or I guess at both locations, you end up having what do you call it, a port or station?
Docking station.
Docking station,
Location,
yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Those, that is a bit of an extra cost, but it's not nearly as much as a second device would be. So if you have a CARES laptop, you work in the office, a hybrid situation where you're in the office some of the time, at home some of the time. A second docking station at home and one in the office is applicable, so you have just that single device.
Commissioner Jordan?
I was just wondering if, have you been putting this out there, if there's been any concerns from other departments, or does it seem like those have been kind of addressed with the exceptions and the ability to override it as long as it comes out of the M&O budget of the department?
It's been received pretty well. We don't have policy yet, but we are asking departments as we go through our tech plan of replacing old devices that, you know, can you make this adjustment here? And most groups have done really well with that. There have been a few exceptions, not many at all. And we've reduced our footprint already. So it's been going well, but it will be really nice for us to have this in language that we can bring forward when needed. Other questions?
I assume we have a list of who has what, so
Yes,
you
we
know
do.
who has two.
We do, and it's pretty up to date.
Yeah.
Occasionally we get surprised, but,
Yeah.
you know, sometimes devices move from one person to another, but.
Yeah.
And we've got all of that tracked, but occasionally, you know, we miss on something that we should have, when we approved that at the time that the tech made the adjustments, you didn't get in our notes, but we're cleaning up as we go. We have some software that can identify who has what, who's logged into what.
Yeah.
And, we know what the age of those devices are, what needs to be replaced. We make recommendations on, if you're in the office all the time, a desktop is perfectly fine. In fact, it's better than a laptop. It's more durable. It has more power. It's more capable for, and in the office 100% of the time.
What type of, what, you talk about the, paid from the department's M&O budget, what are some of the costs to, I mean, someone that currently has two devices, two functioning devices, what are the expenses that, what are we?
The
looking at
expense
there?
of the second device.
Okay,
That's the
but they
expense.
already have, I mean, we have the two devices.
When we
so-
have to replace one of them,
Okay,
we would expect them, if they're going to have a second one. to
if,
pay
okay,
that
if
cost.
they get the, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah,
If
they
the
would be
device
better
is replaced.
Yes.
Okay,
Right now, it's absorbed in our, in IT's budget as part of our replacement plan. So the costs sit in IT and get absorbed elsewhere. So
Yeah.
that would be, I think this exception language addresses some of the minor concerns that were raised on it, and the electeds have the ability to still add a second device if they need it. Just they know they have to absorb it within their M&O budget. It's not going to be part of the IT replacement plan.
okay. So I mean, I think I've had two laptops, I think, since I've been here. I have a Surface, Microsoft Surface, which you probably know, if you've got that list. Which I use that when if I'm working from home, and then I have this one. So yeah, I have two. That way I don't have to truck the one back and forth everywhere I go, but
You have an exception.
yeah.
Any other questions regarding this? Okay, we'll move on to the second topic, and that's our generative artificial intelligence acceptable use policy. We'd like to have added to the county procedures and policy manual. This is a fairly large new policy, very important and necessary, we believe. What is generative artificial intelligence? Artificial intelligence is, and I'll try to explain this the best I can. It's very, very complex, but it's a very large volume of data with machine learned intelligence around that set of data. And it is now available in many formats, more new formats coming every day for the average person to take advantage of. Somewhat like a search engine, but a lot more powerful. You can ask it to generate information for you. There are dangers with doing that, and there's a need to have policy around that. We can get into that. Specific AI tools that maybe you've heard of, ChatGPT is probably the most common, the one that's most in the forefront. It's one that we don't allow here at the county. It's the Wild West of artificial intelligence. It's just, there's no rules about it. You can ask it anything. We don't allow for that to be here at the county. Others, OpenAI and Copilot. Copilot is Microsoft's things associated AI, and that's the direction we're going. We will only be allowing Copilot, the enterprise offering that Microsoft provides will be the Copilot product there. There's a lot of benefits to generative AI. You can have it assist you in creating documents and writing code if you're a programmer, doing a lot of different things. The one thing that you have to be aware of when you use it though, is that you need to vet it. You need to put your eyes on what you're generating there and make it your own. It's a tool there for your use, but it's not a tool there to just do your work. And that's explained in the policy if you've had a chance to read it. That's really, really important. But the benefits are there for productivity, creativity, and efficiency. Risks and mitigations, concerns related to data privacy. We don't want to just regurgitate what someone might bring up with AI, just due to the fact that that information may not be accurate. It may be something that got into the greater realm of data that's potentially provided to you. And as an employee of Spokane County, it's your duty to glean out and use what's appropriate out of AI when using it. Bias, there can be a bias with the results that you get. You may ask for information or something that maybe you're looking for help in coding a certain type of application. You need to know what your real reason for this is, and to cut out any biases that may be part of the result set that is returned to you. Using AI responsibly, following the rules within the policy that we're putting out there will mitigate a lot of these risks. We're hoping they mitigate all of them, but it's hard to mitigate everything. That's why we have a policy, is to provide the rules and what our employees need to follow. The policy framework, we developed this policy. City of Tacoma was one of the first agencies in the state of Washington to develop a comprehensive AI policy, generative AI policy. They shared that readily at an ACES conference, and ACES is our technical city and county managers group that we attend regularly. They provided the policy at that conference. They allowed people to take a look at that. We also, I believe it was Ashley Cameron who provided us with a NACO template for an AI policy, and we really integrated a lot of that along with the good points from Tacoma and our own knowledge that we had in creating our policy. So we feel it's a pretty good policy. We really feel that what's most important within the policies is the guidelines for safe and ethical use by employees. And we also feel that this policy is one that will be constantly under scrutiny and having to be updated based on new things that come out in the AI realm. This is a very fast moving area of technology, probably the fastest. If you see all the commercials on TV, a lot of things can be done with AI, can be done for you with AI. And we're looking to do some of those things that benefit our employees, but don't believe all the hype. If you have questions regarding what AI can do for you, we have staff here, Justin specifically, that can help you with understanding the best use of AI here at the county. With that, Justin, would you like to add anything regarding AI?
I think you covered it well. Just that the risk on data privacy is astronomical, and just want to reinstate the ethical use of it, the bias that can be returned. It's not to mention the vast majority of its data cuts off in September of 21, so you're not getting the most current information. So you could be potentially providing information out there that's outdated, and it doesn't learn from experience. It makes simple reasoning errors. It can be actually overly gullible and accepting false statements from users. So it can also be an awesome tool. It's just it needs to be human edited and, you know, human read before we provide content from the county based using AI tools.
The dates that you mentioned, September of 21 is noted in the policy that data that's being used for return of information is based on information prior to that date. And so, use cases, you can use this for a variety of reasoning. Programming, it's incredible use for that, for specific small snippets of code. How would I do this in Visual Basic? You know, how would I do this for, you know, or in C#? How would I do this specific item with these parameters? How would be the best way to look at that? You might get 4 or 5 different answers back, and you can pick through that and find what really works well in the situation that you're looking to develop something for in an integration with an application in our office. You might use it to help you generate an offer letter for someone. You've created offer letters in the past, but is this the best looking offer letter I can create? You can quickly get some examples of other offer letters that you can maybe make this better. You can use it for a variety of documenting different things in different manners and just see best practices. I think that's a really good example of best use is, am I doing this particular thing that I do every day in the best way possible? Now, for a normal employee that's having to follow the rules within their department, they need to follow those rules. But if you're helping set those rules, you might want to check on that occasionally and see if what you're doing is the best in how you're doing it. Can you do it better? Can you improve on that? So a lot of good capability there in the use of artificial intelligence. So one thing that we want to do is have a policy that really guides staff in how we use a tool and use it effectively and safely as well. Questions?
So I haven't looked at Copilot, you know, so I'll have to look at that to see how that works and all of that. But I think it's running on my LoSAC executive committee call at 8. They were using AI to do note taking, you know, to take minutes from the meeting. So I don't know if Copilot does that, because I mean, that would be, you know, in some meetings, really great to capture everything that somebody else isn't having to do. So
You'd have to have a component that would be, you know, listening and interpreting. And again, even after that was all generated for you, it would take you or someone
Right.
else
You
to
still
go
have to
through
make
that
sure.
and correct the spelling errors, the logic errors that are missed, because this is a machine. Listen. So
Yeah, but for just simple stuff, I mean, not for our board meeting, but for simple other meetings. I mean, so is that something that you're wanting us to just use specifically Copilot for at a work session? I guess I just-
Microsoft's solution, enterprise solutions, yeah, they have a solution that would do the same.
Okay.
Yeah, the good thing and why the direction we're going with Microsoft Enterprise Solutions is that you can safely use AI in that example and know that the information that it records or is if you enter will not be applied to the large language model to the rest of the world, basically. So it terminates its session and it does not record that information to be recorded to that large language. So, but yes.
So that part's very important there, so nothing proprietary to Spokane County, just put into the larger model. You know, and anybody else can have access to that, so that's very important. Probably one other thing to note too is some of the AI that Kevin mentioned at the beginning here, these are not, you know, integrated into certain applications, like Teams has its own AI model, Workday has its own AI model. Those are separate from those that are contained within that application that are used just for that application to help that more efficient. So
Workday AI just works within the ecosystem of Workday. So you might look for a best practice for some expenditure model that you're looking at, and it will take what works best across all of their workday, clients out there, all several thousand of them. And really come back with some good information rather than trying to figure out something on your own or working with maybe another couple of agencies. So, and Teams is the same way. It's got its own AI model, but it totally works within the Teams ecosystem and does not go outside for anything else. So AI is coming into play in a lot of areas. So having an understanding going in on how to move forward with this is really
Yeah, and I think that'll be kind of an education piece that as you roll out the policy to let people know, because I mean, I wouldn't want them to think that they couldn't use those functions, if they're available within Workday or Teams. I don't know how it all works. I'm sure part of it's just a search engine within the software.
Yeah.
So no, I think it's better for us to be safe. I was telling everyone I was back in Ohio, and I think it was one of the cities in Ohio, it was either Canton or Cleveland, that was shut down for over a week with ransomware. So it's out there, it's happening
So
today.
Franklin County, Washington has just recently had a scare leading into election season.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
so it's for real, and we've got to pay attention. So thank you guys for doing all the hard work and understanding and helping us.
Other questions? If not, we just ask the board to consider approving both, the amendment and the new policy. That would be great.
And I'll be on next week's agenda.
Also, one other thing I throw out there, Justin, throwing you out there. A new subcommittee at the state level under the CIO, the state computer information officer, he has put together a technology services board security subcommittee. And Justin was nominated and is part of that board now. So he'll be serving on that board for a year. So I'm excited about that. So here's some letters from the state CIO that you can pass around. Okay. Thank you all. Appreciate your time.
Thank you. Good morning.
Commissioners,
Oh, good to see you.
C2. So this item was just basically some loan cleanup. It's with, in regards to Whitewater Creek's loans. So, basically just changing the loan payment terms. I believe it was 6 loans, that I put in there. It was just identified during, an audit for Whitewater Creek. They got their numbers, how they calculated their loans. I went through our loan software. We had some numbers not lining up. I looked through our loan policy, our loan terms, payment terms on those contracts. Realized that there's something not aligning, and seeing that terms that were agreed upon were slightly different than what were in the actual contracts, which they were basically made as templates. So this is just some loan cleanup. And I would expect in the future for me to come back with potentially other loan changes as well. But it's just one of the steps in cleaning up all of them.
Any questions?
When were the initial, errors made? How far back were these?
These were, some of them were recent. I think the oldest one was 2010.
Oh, okay.
So payments have been made based on the actual agreement, but the loan terms just don't add up,
Okay.
or they don't align with those payments. So I just want to make sure that our numbers are lining up and we actually have loan terms that back that up as well.
Okay.
It's clear, database cleanup, making sure that loan agreements reflect what we agreed with them at the time. There was a couple that Pavel's been finding that the loan terms did not line up with what we verbally communicated with the recipient at the time. So we're reflecting these things correctly in the loan agreements.
And just so you all know as well, our department's been kind of trying to set a better structure so that we actually have policies and some kind of, like I said, set structure so that we can make decisions on how loans are structured, what the payment terms are, what exactly sets those payment terms. So if any of you would be interested in me briefing that or anything like that, just so you're aware of it, I definitely could. But that's just kind of the way we're going right now, just so we don't have any type of inconsistencies between either partners or projects or what it may be. We actually have set policies that we just go, if it's this kind of project, they get these kind of loan terms, and that's how we do it. So just clean up for now and in the future, so everything's clean.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Kyle, I think you're up next.
Take this first one, on behalf of Deb. Morning, commissioners. This first one is an interlocal agreement with the Department of Natural Resources. This is a fire fuels reduction project up by our North County Transfer Station, the Colbert Transfer Station. We have about 60 acres up there over approximately 8 parcels. And DNR actually approached us with this. They got a bunch of funding through the Climate Commitment Act for basically high priority areas. So at no cost to the county, they'll be doing a fuels reduction project, assuming we approve this in a local agreement. Ron, I think there's another slide up there, unless we'd like to see those areas, but it's basically masticating the thick areas. They'd be out performing this work this fall, and just protecting all that acreage we own up there, with a nice benefit and no cost to the county.
Questions? That was an easy one.
All right, we'll keep them coming. Matt's gonna join me up here, and we're gonna go through a couple things. Start with
Oh,
traffic
I'm sorry,
code.
just a second, I guess, Chris, I didn't hear the.
Well, sorry, I was just gonna say, yeah, Kyle, keep bringing us more no-cost items and you'll have very short briefings, I'm sure.
I'll do my best.
All right, good morning, commissioners.
Good morning.
Got a few different things, 3 traffic code revisions, a vacation and an award we'd like to set. So starting out, the first one you can see up on the screen here is 65th Avenue, Juanita. And this was brought to us by a concerned citizen, and we took a look at the traffic control. We agree it's a little confusing the way it's currently signed. So we'd like to add the stop sign just to make it abundantly clear who has right of way coming up to this kind of unusual intersection. It's fairly high traffic, high enough to warrant paying attention to it. So
And it's right by our facility, right? That's a house there, so.
it's not far from the water
Okay.
park, but a little further southeast.
It is kind of a little confusing.
It is, yeah, definitely is. So anyway, that would be our proposal. Happy to answer any questions. Okay, next one.
Down in South Hill, oh no, this one's gonna be up north.
So this one is up north. It's next to a school, and we're proposing to extend a school zone. And unfortunately, kind of what's driving it is somebody got hit in this crosswalk in front of the school. So we're extending it to the north up to Daymount, and then 350 feet east of that Sycamore Street intersection up there. The portion in red is the extension. Just trying to make it safer for everybody coming and going to school. They have a lot of walking kids in this area, so just want to keep it safe for the kids. Answer any questions on that one. Next one. So Fruit Hill, if you're familiar with it, is out in Spokane Valley off of Argonne and north of Wellesley upriver. And you can see the red line there. If you were driving up Arbor Crest, there's a winery up at the top of the hill that a lot of folks like to go to. It's a beautiful spot, especially in the summer. And it gets a lot of traffic, and they've had a lot of issues with people parking along that section, and there's really not room to park. And what we've started doing is if we get approached by law enforcement and they ask us for help on these, we're trying not to post the whole world no parking would be the short answer, but in cases like this where it's causing safety concerns and it's an enforcement issue for the sheriff, we're happy to help out. So gonna put signs on the portion shown in red here, just to keep it safe for everybody. It is a really nice view. If you ever go up there, you can see why people like to park along there, but it's just not a safe situation. Happy to answer any questions on that one. Okay, next one. The next one is a vacation. Next slide, please. And you can see we're up on the south hill here. This is Carnahan along the south edge of the aerial. You can see it's 37th Avenue. And the reason for this vacation is that one person owns both sides of the portion in red, the existing right of way, and it's a Paris Homes project. They're replatting it, so they're going to be dedicating all different right of ways that actually work with the topography up there. It's fairly steep terrain. So just trying to clean that up so that this right of way doesn't exist in the middle of the plat. We're not at all opposed to it. It makes sense. Frankly, they already have approved plans showing a different alignment, so they just need this before they can do the platting work at the backside of their project.
They're already clearing it.
Yeah, they've been working utilities in, they're quite a ways down the path. So they need this. If we're not opposed to it, and we certainly aren't. They've been in conversation with us and we support the vacation. Board's agreeable to it. Happy to answer any questions. Okay. All right.
We have another presentation on the next item. Thank you. This is with regards to the federal earmark that went through CMR's office in this last go around here. This is for it's a little broader one here. This is sorry, I got it backwards. This is the actual intersection. For the Craig Road down there at 90. And looking at the intersection revision there, as well as any potential work that could be associated with that. We were given a $4.5 million earmark on this. It does have a 20% match requirement on it, so it is a pretty healthy match. You get 13.5.
Yeah, the first two were 13.5. We don't know about the other here.
It could be 13.5, could be 20. It's unclear yet until we accept it. We actually place. So I go through the timelines.
Yeah, so, we have to have this one obligated by September 30th of 27 and built by September 30th of 32. So we have some time on it, but these take time, so that's a good thing. This one's gonna be primarily dedicated to the interchange, as Kyle alluded to, getting all the way through right of way, hopefully PE, sign, getting it ready to go. So first step we are in the middle of, it's the intersection revision report, the formal approval through Federal Highways and WashDOT to make modifications to one of their I-90 interchanges. So we're in the midst of that. This will help with those.
We'll be, pounding on doors to get somebody else to cover those match requirements because it's a hefty lift. It would be a big hit to the road fund if we weren't able to secure that. So conversations with S3R3, conversations with certainly at the state level, it really needs, we need to bring some partners together.
For this at 13.5% at 607,000. So it's a big match because it's a big grant. We're hopeful the state will come around on that. They like to be last money in on bigger projects like this, and several opportunities we're aware of.
Yeah, and certainly support going to the state. We've had conversations with the State Transportation Committee on both the House and Senate about this, and so they know that it's coming. But for us, it's probably S3R3 in terms of making that grant, getting the match instead of going to the road fund and stuff. So that's our fallback plan. But it really should be from the state.
And this is a piece of that kind of larger puzzle as we look at this whole corridor here. And it's really nice to, the more partners we bring in on this, it just makes our case stronger as we continue to move forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Check and make sure Ben, oh, there you are, hiding behind the column. Ben Brownwell's gonna join us. Sorry, Rob Lindsay had to be out today. Engagement he had to attend on the family side. So we're gonna be talking about the salmon habitat restoration.
We have, Andy Dunow is on the phone by Zoom and, Brent, there was another gentleman, Brent Nichols, who's gonna join us and I haven't seen him. I don't know, Andy, if you.
Hi, Ben, yeah, he should be wandering around there somewhere, but I can certainly go ahead and see if he finds his room. Let me double check my text and see if he says anything.
Give 1 second, and we can also do Deb's item if we'd like.
He says he's stuck in traffic and wants the county to improve the situation. So, I apologize, but I'm ready to go, so we can get this going.
Must be on a city street.
There you go. So first of all, thank you all very much for letting us do this. We're going to give you an update on the Salmon Restoration Collaborative, which is the lead entity for salmon for the Spokane River. We'll get into what all that means in a second. So next slide, please.
And Andy, I'm gonna interrupt you just as a bit of background. This is a follow-up on a board's resolution to participate in this. A year ago, almost exactly a year ago, we presented this and that the commission decided to support this effort with the Spokane Tribe as the lead agency. And so then they've been doing some technical committee work, and then this is the next step to create a citizens committee. And so what the goal for this presentation and then the follow-up action would be for the commissioners, for you to decide on who would be the member to represent Spokane County on this citizens committee that actually does the final approval and moves the projects forward to go forward for funding. So now I'll give it back to Andy to provide a bit more detail.
Thank you very much, Ben. That was exactly right. And I apologize for not being there in person, but I tested positive for COVID last weekend and didn't want to find out if I could give it to you. Okay, next slide, please.
Wearing a mask right now.
Next slide. Thank you. So our lead entity is referred to as the Spokane Salmon Restoration Collaborative, aka SSRC, which sounds more like a transportation division than it does a salmon habitat work group, but that's what we are. And you can see the logo that's been developed, and that's part of the lead entity, which we're going to talk about in a second. Next slide, please. So we talked about this last time we gave you a backgrounder. I think Ben was right, it was about a year ago. Lead entities across the state, of which there are now 26, were established by the RCW that you're seeing. They are water-based restoration organizations. They could be led by tribes, nonprofits, counties, conservation districts, whoever. Structurally, somewhat similar to voluntary stewardship program that you're familiar with, or your watershed planning activities. And it's exactly as Ben said, the end result of this is to solicit, and prioritize habitat projects that support salmon reintroduction. The reason there hasn't been one on the Spokane River watershed is that this was done all the way back in 2000 for ESA listed species. When the state decided it wanted to support salmon reintroduction, which was non-ESA, that's when the Spokane River watershed was invited to apply. So next slide, please. So just again, at a really high level, all lead entities are based on partnerships and trust. Cannot underscore enough that these are all voluntary, right? So there is no habitat project which is mandated. If you don't have landowner support, you don't move forward. Very intent, and we'll talk about more of this in a minute, about the social values and identifying those habitat projects and making sure the counties and others have a very, very strong voice in that. And of course, we're trying to maximize and leverage the public investment. Next slide, please. So that is a picture of the Spokane River watershed. You can see the state line there. And obviously our work, because it's state funded, is on the Washington side of the line. Next slide, please. So additional wins for Spokane County besides salmon, supporting salmon reintroduction. Again, all voluntary and landowner support is required for your various water quality standards, whether it's DO, et cetera, temperature. These habitat projects support meeting those standards. And obviously it supports recreation and economic development goals to the extent we reestablish a salmon fishery. Next slide, please. So for our lead entity, which has been in formation for the last 2 years, the Spokane Tribe of Indians is the coordinator. The technical committee was established in the spring of 2022. It has 14 organizations on it, and it's been working hard ever since. We'll talk more about that in a second. The key part here is that to get recognition, you have to have initiating government resolutions. So those came from Spokane County, Stevens County, Lincoln County, City of Spokane, Spokane Tribe, and the Coeur d'Alene Tribe. All of that rolled up after a long process in receiving official state recognition in February of 2024. So next slide, please. So now, exactly as Ben said, we're at the point where we have to form the Citizens Committee. You can see on the left there what the basic purposes of the Citizens Committee is. There is no more important purpose than when the technical committee eventually comes up with habitat projects in a rank order. It's actually the Citizens Committee that reviews that list, re-ranks if it chooses before submitting to the Spokane River, the Salmon Recovery Funding Board. So to do this, we're asking each initiating government to initially select a representative. So before you bother asking, we know that the city of Spokane is going to put Kitty Kletzky on that group. Stevens County is going to have Wes McCart, and Lincoln County is going to have Scott Hutzel. So once we get the Spokane County rep, those initiating governments plus reps from the Coeur d'Alene Tribe and Spokane Tribe will convene, and then we will probably give them an initial list of organizations or people who have expressed interest in being on the Citizens Committee, and then they will determine what that final list should look like, and invitations will go out. Before you bother asking, there is no formula for who is on the Citizens Committee. So I went and looked at lead entities across the state, and I saw nothing but diversity. And eventually I called the state up and I said, I don't get it. And they said, it's whatever you want to be. So their only requirement is that the initiating governments be provided the opportunity to be on the Citizens Committee. The rest of the composition is strictly up to you. Once that committee eventually gets formed, we have to create the charter and bylaws, which should be pretty straightforward. And then they're on their way with implementing the work plan. So let me hit pause there for a second and ask if there are any questions, since that's the big ask of this meeting. Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Commissioner French is going.
Yeah, how many people ultimately do you want on the Citizens Committee?
Oh, great question. I'm not seeing it as being less than 7 or more than 13, but ultimately you guys get to make that choice. There are 5 initiating governments, so you can start there. The big question is, from your perspective, I'll just use an example. The commissioners could say, or initiating governments, we really want to make sure there's a landowner or a farm representative or, an environmental organization or and that's going to drive the size of what you want.
So, and you said 7 to 13, which I would agree, I want to get into it, but so then I apologize if you stated this and I didn't pay attention, that is it from the area or just from the county?
Good question. From the watershed. So those initiating governments are the governments inside the watershed. So they could be
So
from
we already
Lincoln,
have
Stevens, or Spokane. Yeah.
Okay, so are you saying like, Commissioner Hutzel from Lincoln County is already on that or wanting to be on it? I guess that's what I was confused.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I cheated and I asked Lincoln County who they were going to put on it, and he said their commissioners are going to put him on it. And Wes had the same conversation up at Stevens County.
Okay.
So
they're-
basically, sorry, go
They
ahead.
already want to be two of the members of that committee.
They will be two of the members. Kitty from the city will be another member, so that's three. And then there will be somebody from the Coeur d'Alene tribe and the Spokane tribe. So I counted wrong. There's 6 total initiating governments.
Okay. I think that's what we kind of got to get a feel for, like, okay, who already is wanting to be on it? And is it, who's really deciding who, we're just deciding one member to be on it? I guess I'm confused.
I'm sorry. So you're deciding one member. The process that we're coming up with is to let the initiating governments, those 6, decide on the other members. Right? And there is no formula to the other members. I mean, in theory, to be honest with you, you could say, we just want the initiating governments. We don't want any other representation. I wouldn't recommend that, but you could do that. So when you look at other, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That would be a decision by the initiating governments,
Yes.
not just Spokane County Commissioners. That's what I'm
That's right.
make sure I'm.
So the six folks would decide how to then move forward with any other additional members.
Correct. That's exactly right. So some lead entities put state agencies on it, like DFW or Ecology. Some put conservation districts on it. Some put NGOs, like in our case, it would be perhaps the Lands Council or Trout Unlimited. Some people put the Farm Bureau, It's really, again, back to what the purpose is. You're trying to come up with something that represents your social cultural values in the watershed.
So when you're looking for citizens in this, and I'm going to ask this question, I'm probably going to ask it wrong, but bear with me in terms of when you're looking for salmon restoration, I'm assuming that would be in that part of the river that is not got a lot of activity. So if you were looking for citizen representation, it probably is not going to be somebody from downtown Spokane versus somebody that might be a property owner along the river, either in the valley or, by Long Lake kind of a deal. I'm just trying to get the sense about, is that citizen somebody in the rural area or the incorporated area, or does it matter?
It doesn't matter. Sorry, I was a little bit late. I'm Dr. Brent Nichols, Spokane Tribe Fisheries and Water Resource Director. And currently I will be the Spokane Tribal representative on the Citizens Committee. It doesn't really matter.
Okay.
Because the habitat projects that will be presented from the technical committee could be anywhere within the watershed. And would benefit the whole watershed. So the citizen committee can be made, it's initially made up of the organizing entities, the original 6. And then we can sit down and decide, look at who's represented on the technical committee and look at the watershed and say, okay, our demographics are this, what kind of representation rounds out our committee here for those citizens to make the decisions as to the best ways to improve habitat within the watershed. So it could be someone from downtown rural areas, or it could be somebody out in the middle of nowhere that has a 1,000-acre farm that is right on the river. I think what we're looking for there are representatives that could not represent themselves, but represent that kind of group.
Yeah.
So a landowner's representative, a farmer's representative, something like that.
Okay.
And find some folks that can do that and keep it within that manageable number of people. for making those decisions. And it doesn't have to be a technical person with expertise in salmon or anything like that. It can be anybody we want to put on the committee that represents the community. Because the technical experts are going to handle developing the projects and ranking those projects the way they think they should be implemented. And then those move up to the citizen. After we rank those, then that tells us which ones we put forward to the CERT board for funding requests.
Richard, just for your knowledge, we have one of Ben's staff, Derek Millar, is on the technical committee working on that.
And
That's right.
a
Go,
side-
Jamie.
Sorry, Andy, a side note there, the technical committee's been working really hard the last 2 years. And we're in the middle of data collection right now, filling in missing data gaps for the modeling activity to develop that.
Thank you.
So from us today, you'd like us to choose somebody or? be able to
That's what we're
put
here
somebody
to,
in-
you don't have to choose today.
Right.
Like right now, you might have to make that decision. But talk amongst yourselves and figure out who you want to represent. And be a representative on the initial committee. And then that's really all we need.
So I guess the question, do we want it to be an elected or could we have?
Yes, you have your choice on that. So the other initiating governments, if I don't count the tribes, are putting electeds on there. But you absolutely have the choice of you could put a staff person on.
Or I'm gonna see too, I don't know, Ben, how your type is or Rob's to maybe have one of you. Just because you know everything we're trying to do as the county. And I know Commissioner McCart and Commissioner Hetzel would be looking at for, counties as well, so. I don't know, because we're kind of unique in Spokane County with all the different areas of the watershed, not just the river itself, but Water 55 and just all of that, so. I think it'd be good to have that expertise of knowing all the watersheds in, within Spokane County and how they all interact. Rather than some of us may just know the river, kind of thing, so that would be one of my thoughts.
And just, and one thing is you can't have the same representative. at both committees. So your technical representative has to be different than your citizens committee.
Which would work. So if Amy or Devin are on the technical committee, Ben or Rob could be on the citizens committee. Again, it's really your choice. Frankly, it's a political matter who you want to see represented on that committee. Anyway, next slide, you'll understand more as we keep going here, but I think you're on the right track in terms of the questions, that's for sure.
Something you wanted to say, Ben? You look like you had something you wanted to say.
No, thank you. I appreciate that.
You had a look.
The comment, Commissioner CUNY, and would consider it, and I'm here every day, and so it's a very interesting topic, and I'm interested in it, but.
We could discuss amongst Water Resources Group. If you would like our department.
And this sounds like it's gonna be a long-term initiative. And so it would seem to be, I'd support having been on there and stuff, one, he's got great expertise, but two, he's not so long in the tooth, it'll be around for a while, kind of a deal, so. Since you want to have that continuity over multiple years.
Ben has impressed us on many projects. Another one he can make us proud of.
So many things to say. I better keep moving on here. Exactly as Brent said, this is just a couple slides on progress. So the big thing that's being worked on now with the technical team is something called ecosystem diagnostic treatment modeling. Don't say that 10 times fast, but exactly what Brent said. We've completed what's called the data gaps analysis. And we're out there with 4 interns from local colleges, collecting data to close those gaps. The bottom line of the whole thing is to figure out what's would or is constraining reintroduction of salmon from being successful. So it could be temperature, it could be flow, it could be a culvert, it could be whatever. So this is actually one of the, if not the largest ever watershed-wide sampling program ever. It's going to go over 2 years. They're going to put it into a really complex model, which will remind Ben of SQL modeling, and he probably just turned pale and green right there. But it really gives you the data you need to decide, well, if these are where our opportunities are for habitat projects, here's what's most likely to be successful. So that's really the core of the scientific process, if you will. Did you want to add anything to that, Brent?
No, you're good.
Okay, next slide, please. So like I said, 2024, we are out there, have been out there contacting landowners. We have the 4 interns, which have been funded through a Spokane River Forum grant. They started in June, excuse me. They've got 14 or 15 surveys completed. We're looking at getting 50 or 70 done this year, the rest done next year. We've got what's called eDNA sampling also happening at the same time, and that basically just tells you what types of fish are out there I don't even understand how it works. Brent will have to explain it, but basically you take a water sample and it can detect what type of species are out there, if I understood it right. And we're also checking on temperature, of which, as you all know, Spokane County already has an extensive temperature network. This one just is going to do some more sampling in areas where you don't have temperature right now loggers. We are trying to finish up the SpokaneSalmon.org website. You can cheat and take a look at that right now. It's missing 2 critical videos, but you can see it and all the information up there already. We had a very successful Expo 50 H2O symposium, where an update on the Salmon Restoration Collaborative and Salmon Reintroduction happened. Over 270 folks participated in that last month. And we've been doing various association and stakeholder meetings like Friends of the Little Spokane River and so forth. So we are getting out there, and we feel like we have a pretty good sense of who's who. Next slide, please. So real quick, looking at 2025, we'll get that citizens and technical committee meetings going. I don't want you to get too freaked out if it's Ben or anybody else. After the first 2 or 3 meetings of the citizens committee, I don't think they're going to be meeting more than once or twice for a year for the next couple of years as we ramp up identifying projects. We're going to continue the data collection. The good news is the Spokane Tribe received PIA funding for interns next year, so that's already in place. We're going to run that EDT model hopefully next fall, and then we're going to get going on the limiting factors analysis and so forth. When we say possibly solicit first round habitat projects, that's actually something Brent's working on right now. We're back and forth with the state, whether I think it's next January or the following January, we're actually going to be able to submit projects for funding. Next slide, please. So that is it. I know I sort of ran through that quickly, but I was trying to keep you guys on time. So back to the essential question with representation. Unless you want to make a decision right there, which is fine with us, I'll just be in communication with Ben and Rob to see who that choice is. And my guess is, depending on how summer schedules go, we'll try and get those initiating governments together in August, September at the latest. What I missed, Brent?
Nothing I can think of.
Is there, I guess for us, more that we want to discuss, or do we just like put a resolution together?
And we have a resolution ready to go. And yeah.
Just putting a name in?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can have a quick conversation about
capacity. Bob and Ben and folks figure out.
Yes, I mean, I think that would be good, but I think that if it's not gonna be the commissioners, we wanna have someone that the commissioners have trust and confidence in. And I think Commissioners French's point of having someone who's on it long term is a good point. So I would ask you to take that into consideration and we'll take into consideration and you're gonna give to us. And then put that in there, but I mean, if there's a resolution ready to go with the name, we would just need to know by Friday if you're. Okay. 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 Thank you very much. Thank you, Andy, for being on. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for having us. Really appreciate all your support along the way. Your staff has been terrific on the technical committee.
Thank you. We're happy that I think Spokane County is very blessed to have such great people in our water resources area.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's franchise season, so it just so happens to be this month here, so Deb Ferguson's with us here today to talk about the first of 3 or 4 that are coming through in the next couple of weeks.
Yes. Well, good morning, commissioners. I have the Spokane Regional Broadband Development Authority, Broadlink, has requested a telecommunications franchise with Spokane County to locate their facilities within the county's jurisdictional road right-of-ways. This is dark fiber, will be located above ground and in some cases below ground. It will form a public benefit open access network available to internet service providers for an access fee with a public-private partnership. Broadlink plans to deploy this network throughout the county by the fall of 2029. Can I answer any questions?
I maybe Kyle, and have you speak to this kind of being our public works as well as the Broadlink's board as to why this is good.
Certainly, I mean, I think the commissioners are very familiar with the public benefit that Broadlink's bringing to this community, leveraging hopefully a windfall of state funds to provide access to underserved areas in Spokane County. This is a very similar, nearly identical franchise to other telecommunications companies that are servicing Spokane County. A couple of just kind of key points, obviously, if they go underground, that goes through our design review, standard area depths to make sure it's safe, locatable, and conflict avoidance. But above ground, now there are opportunities for them to join on a Vista or Inland Power and Light poles. If they do site their own poles, they own that asset. New language on our franchises really strengthens that once a pole is in the ground, whoever put it in the ground owns it and owns it forever until they remove it. We have run into that a couple of times when, say, a Vista goes underground or relocates theirs, but then they've subleased to other telecommunication companies and they want to pass on the responsibility, but whoever put the pole down owns the pole unless they have a formal agreement to sell it or transfer it. They can't get out of it because now we have a fixed asset in the right of way that needs to be maintained and could potentially become a hazard. So the other final piece of this is that this, as long as what you'll see in some of the other franchises coming forward, has language allowing the county to assess a franchise fee if and when we decide to do so. So we have that, we know that is a right of the state. We're making sure that that is clear in all of our franchise agreements. We haven't put a model together for that yet. We are just making sure that our agreements very explicitly contemplate that.
Yeah, which I'll say, it's a really good thing for us to be doing, because even if this is Broadlink at this point, in the future, it could be somebody else using it, access to that. So we just want to make sure that, we have that in there as part of that. So just because it's Broadlink now doesn't mean that we're giving it away for the future to people for free. Commissioner Jordan.
Do the franchise agreements have any requirements in them about maintenance specifically? How does that work? Is it just kind of at the discretion of the owning entity?
It doesn't specifically state that we would maintain it. It does have a clause that says that if the county engineers finds that it is unsafe for the traveling public or for the property, he can ask them to fix it. If they don't do it, then we can do it and then we can charge them.
Perfect, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Good morning. Make sure everyone's got enough chairs today. Brian, you can go ahead and sit. You don't have to sit in the back. Come on. Nice try. It's not church. Okay, well, welcome. This is our next item. So Randy, I'm gonna let you.
We're here to talk about the application, but Larry's gonna do a presentation first, talk about the project and what the bond will be.
Thank you, Randy. Thank you, Madam Chair. Commissioners, good morning. We are really excited to be here today to talk to you about the next step in the bond issuance. We're going to review very quickly the projects that we're putting into the bond and happy to answer any questions that you might have as we go through that process. And just wanted to say thanks to Randy and the bond team. We have a really terrific team of people working on the documents right now, and I'm very happy with the progress that we've made and the teamwork, the capability. And I just want to say thank you to Randy for leading that effort, doing a great job. And we're on schedule and excited to be looking at a fall issuance. I just want to note that yesterday we set a new record for screening passengers at the security checkpoints, 8,161. And that eclipses the record that we set last July as well. So we're doing well. We've got lots of seats. Of course, the new service, the new gates that we've opened are being very well received by passengers. And we've started now on the demolition phase for the Alaska ground hold room, where we'll build another 3 gates as part of the Trex project that we are talking about today. And I think we have some updated photos even in the presentation. So I'm going to ask Rob to lead us through that. And of course, please just, if you have questions, just ask as we go, and we'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you, Larry, and good morning, everyone. Appreciate the time today. So we'll go through this presentation and just wanted to throw out there the financing timeline in terms of where we are. Just wanted everybody up to date in terms of where we are within the process, as well as what's coming in the next handful of months on here. So in the month of July, we are looking for the adoption of the joint resolution, both by City Council as well as by the Board of County Commissioners. Just a quick update on where we are. We briefed City Council yesterday afternoon. It is on the legislative agenda for next Monday, the 15th. And then we are seeking approval from the county on July 16th. As we move through July and into August, we're really going to be finalizing documents. And one of the things we wanted to give everybody a heads up on in terms of what is coming in front of county commissioners here over the next couple of months. And so we will be looking for approval of a couple of different legal documents related to the bond issuance, the master bond resolution, the supplemental bond resolution, essentially, which will be just the 2024 series that we will do. And then the airport revenue bond agreement, which is an agreement between the county as well as the airport in terms of just essentially the covenants and the guarantees by the airport to the county in terms of repaying the bond the debt service on the bonds. As we go through August, we also will prepare for September, which is a big month for us in terms of rating agencies. So we will be approaching Moody's and S&P for rating agencies for ratings on our bonds. We will receive those in September. And then in October, we will post documents, we will do some pre-marketing activities, we will post, we will close, and bond proceeds will be received in October. The target date for that is toward the end of October, probably a week or two before the federal election in terms of that time frame. So that's the schedule. We are speaking almost daily to various teams of the bond financing team. And again, I want to echo Larry's thoughts on it. Just thank Randy for his time and effort, but also just the team that's been assembled is just a really, really great team. And it's been very collaborative in nature so far. So really appreciate the county's support for this. We can move to the next slide. And so what are we funding with Series 2024 bonds? And so there's really 4 different main projects we are. As Larry mentioned, Concourse C Trex is really one of the key ones for us. And so we will be including $80 million or approximately $80 million to fund the remaining portion of the build out of Concourse C expansion project. We will also add 27 million in there for the construction of administrative building there at the airport in terms to accommodate staffing needs.
There was nothing next door that we could buy.
Yeah. And the terminal, and frankly, the space we have at the terminal, extremely limited with that. So we're gonna be outside just a little bit of the terminal for that, but it's definitely a need that the airport has in terms of expanding our staffing accommodations that we have. The next one is a fuel facility expansion project. That's gonna add a 4th fuel storage tank, cost of about 10.3 million. That is needed. We have spoken to the airlines about that. Additional storage is gonna be one of those keys for us. In fact, Larry talked about passengers. The month of June, we had our 2nd highest month of fuel flowage that we've ever had in the airport's history. So again, seeing that activity increase and that also is reflected not just in passengers, but fuel as well. And then we're going to include $5 million for a couple of projects at Phelps Field, the Gateway Improvement Project, which we'll go over in a little bit more detail here in the next couple of slides, as well as potentially some initial work to relocate the maintenance facility to northeast side of Phelps Field.
Before you leave that slide, I just wanted to point out something that we are exceedingly proud of in that we will, by the time that the C Trex portion is finished, we will have received over $70 million. And that's conservative, and that we've been able to apply to the project by grants. So to have that significant of an impact on lowering the net that we have to finance is very helpful. And it makes it very affordable for us in terms of the debt service that will be generated by this issuance, and also sets us up for further stages of Trex and on the go forward. So we're just really proud of that and excited that we have more capacity in the future to continue to build projects that we may need to issue additional bonds for in the future. We have the capacity to do that in large part because of the grants we've been able to bring to the project.
Yeah, there will be a slide on that later, but yeah, it's a very good thing to note on here. So if we could go to the next slide. So just a couple of photos of Concourse C. So the one on the left-hand side, the larger one, is the completed west side of that. And I do love that photo with all of the planes sitting there, and as well as on the remain overnight area to just the west of that. The upper right-hand side of that essentially is the Concourse C1. So we are moving to the phase in blue right there, which is the east expansion of the Concourse C terminal. If you could move to the next one, please. And this is a photo of the interior of C7, 8, and 9, the west side that we just opened. Looks remarkable. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to get out there or will soon for that. But it really does look like that. That's not a rendering. I always have to sort of do a double take on that.
My daughter and I landed late Sunday night after her track meet, and she walked out And she was like, is this Spokane? She was like, wow.
We've seen that a lot.
She was very impressed.
Appreciate that very much.
Yeah, it looked amazing.
And if we could move to the next one, the next one is an administrative office building. This is an early rendering, what it's gonna look like. Again, that's gonna be outside of the terminal. So standalone building for us, down there. Again, definitely a need in terms of what we have out there. That will also house our, board meeting area as well, and facilities there. So, really looking forward to getting that started. That's a much needed project for the airport. The next slide is going to show the fuel facility, fuel farm, if you will, what we have. You can see the existing 3 tanks in white with supporting infrastructure around that. The depiction there in green is the 4th tank. That's proposed to add another 500,000 gallon tank to that to bring the capacity up to 1.25 million gallons on there. And again, much needed project for us in terms of supporting flights coming in and out of GEG. And the next couple slides are related to the Phelps Field project. And so the first one that we potentially will fund is the Fancher Gateway improvements. So this is between Rudder and Trent on Fancher, looking at a sign, sort of an entrance to Phelps Field, as well as some improvements to the street and sidewalk areas of that area there. And then the next one, next 2 slides related to the maintenance facility. So right now, our existing maintenance facility, which has been there since early 80s probably, is really right in the middle of prime real estate, if you will, at a GA airport. So we're gonna end up relocating that and then remarketing that area there for potential hangar use there. And so we're gonna relocate that facility. Also, the current existing facility is inadequate for what we have. You can see on the right-hand photo, that's snow removal equipment and ground maintenance equipment sitting on the outside of that facility. So that is open to all the elements throughout the year. And so having a better adequate facility for that is needed on there. And the next slide essentially is the location of that, which is in the northeast side of Phelps Field. So moving on, those are the projects we are going to fund. With that just remaining, this is something that Larry touched base on in terms of the plan of finance for it. That top line is the bond proceeds. So we're looking at 122.3 million in bond proceeds. And then on the left-hand side, really where you look at Concourse C tracks, this is Larry's note that he mentioned earlier, which is all the other funds. And so we are looking at less than half of that project for Concourse C will be bond funded. And that's a really remarkable story for the airport. Just shows to go, we sort of timed it right with the bipartisan infrastructure law, but receiving those funds as well as the federal relief funds, the interim financing funds from the county treasurer's office, really just helped a lot in terms of sort of delaying this bond issue until we really truly needed it from a monetary standpoint.
Second, Commissioner Jordan.
Can you remind me what the federal relief funds were? Was that a particular program? Where did that come from?
Yeah, so there are 2 components of the federal relief funds. The first one is the CARES, so round 1, if you will, of CARES. And so we have been very judicious in terms of the use of that. And so we were able to move $12 million from what essentially an operating and maintenance over into a development grant. And then the second one was some ARPA funds also that we used to repay the tranche 1 of the interim financing treasurer's office.
And Commissioner Jordan, those were specific funds that were dedicated to airports around the nation. They were not part of our funds.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
They were
Yeah.
separate, directly allocated to airports.
Thank you.
And the next slide, if we can go to the next one, it will show essentially the sources and uses of this. And so we are looking at an issuance amount of about $140 million. One thing I will note on that, when you look at the joint resolution and read that, there is an amount in there at $150 million. And the reason for that $10 million cushion, again, is just sort of, it's our cushion in case something pops up, interest rates change, something along those lines. And so it gives us just a little bit of leeway that we then don't have to come back to the airport board, the city and the county for a smaller amount on there. And so again, that's the reason why there's a little bit of a cushion and difference between the issuance amounts here on the screen as well as what is in the joint resolution. So the issuance amount will go fund the project costs, the debt service reserve, the capitalized interest costs, as well as cost of issuance overall for it. We are looking at 30-year bonds for this. Right now, we have some very conservative assumptions in there in terms of our ratings as well as interest rate itself. Obviously, we're hoping to do better than that, but we are modeling that right now based on interest rate of 4.9% all in. And the next one looks at the debt service impacts. So just wanted the county to be aware of the annual debt service numbers on those. And that is roughly about $9.2 million.
You have a slide on there,
I think we have a slide on it. There we go. About $9.2 million of that. You can see the breakdown between the projects. I do just want to note that part of Concourse C will be paid with passenger facility charge or PFCs. And that's a funding source that we've dedicated to repay annual debt service on that. That amount is derived from a couple different methods, but part of it is eligibility as well as just capacity. So not necessarily using all of that capacity for this project, save some for future projects as well as down the pipeline. And the next slide is really just looking at the economic impact. And so we just wanted to note that the county is aware of some of the economic impact from our bond funded projects. So we're looking at about $400 million in economic benefit from the project cost or bond funded project cost that we have. You can see the household earnings there and the job creation. Again, really good stories here in terms of the investment into the region as a whole, creating nearly 1,500 jobs throughout this process in terms of achievement. So really good story in terms of economic impact to Spokane County, the larger regional area. And if we go to the next one, which I think is just the final one, which is just approval of the joint resolution. So per the interlocal, it does call for a joint resolution needed for the airport to incur long-term debt. We have already asked for approval from the airport board that was given on June 20th. We briefed the city yesterday, as I mentioned, and that will go for approval next week and then approval from the county hopefully on the 16th of July. And that just essentially authorizes the issuance and sale of revenue bonds by the county to be used exclusively for the airport purposes on there. And that concludes our presentation. We are happy to answer any questions that folks may. Nope.
I think it all sounds like it's all working. So yeah, so it's a resolution just so that way everything's ready to go.
The resolution was attached to your agenda item, and that's the one that was signed by the airport board, and then pending approval by the city on next Monday, it will be under consent agenda for Tuesday.
And I have to say, I've been in the new section several times already.
Thank
and
you.
It's lovely.
Yeah, we appreciate that.
You know, great comments from everybody who's there, and I'm actually looking forward to, I have to go to Tampa for NACO. So I'm actually flying from Tampa to Charlotte to catch the direct flight from Charlotte to Spokane.
Excellent.
So
Yeah.
I will be anxious to see how that goes.
Well,
And kind of let you know how Charlotte, airport.
It's been
is,
doing
too.
well. The American's very happy with bookings so far, and so everything's all the gauges are in the green, as we like to say. So on that.
Yeah, so I'll be anxious to see how it goes next week.
Safe travels. Thank you. Thank you all very
I'll
much.
text you along the way.
Yes, please do. I appreciate eyes and ears.
Like poor Larry gets off, I like, can't believe this is happening at this airport, like.
Wouldn't happen at our airport. That's what we always say. Right.
Yeah, other than I guess you get the text from your board member.
Yes, ma'am.
On other ones.
Well, thank you all very
Thank
much. We
you all
really
very
appreciate your
much.
time and the support. We're really excited to be moving forward on the projects.
Yeah, it's very excited. And then, too, I think we want to highlight this at the state of county. So, I think, Pat has reached out to Todd. Just because it's a big project going on within the county, and so we want to make sure we.
And it's very visible. There's not anywhere that I'm going anymore. If I'm speaking at a Rotary or any, just interacting with people where people are saying, hey, I know someone who's working on that project, or hey, I was in the terminal. It's really beautiful. It really, provides this really amazing front door image for the community. And so it really does have a lot of interest from the community at large. It's really exciting to see everybody excited about it. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, Scott.
If you tell everybody what's in the state, you're gonna sell less tickets, because they're gonna know.
Okay, yes, Doug.
Morning. All right, we are pleased to be here this morning with an update on our Plants Ferry Phase 1, a component of our Plants Ferry Phase 1 project, which of course is the combined project. More specifically, we are looking to award the bid to complete the sanitary sewer infrastructure. We received 4 bids for this, and at the end of the presentation, we'll be asking you to award the bid for project P13913, the lowest bidder, in the amount of $533,171.90, which includes sales tax. And so next slide, please. Again, just a nice little overview. You might recognize a few of these slides. This is our combined project with our ARPA funds award. Next slide, please. And you might recognize this slide from our last briefing on the Plants in Camas Meadow project, where we had worked very early on with our owners' reps in developing a strategy to try to complete the project, to be able to complete that within the limited construction window that we have. And in doing so, we pulled out the sanitary sewer infrastructure component at approximately 600,000 of the 12 million that was granted for the overall project. Next slide, please. And again, just a reminder of what phase 1 looks like, and we'll be looking to extend sanitary sewer to that existing building, as we're going to be building over and eliminating the drain fill as part of the project. Next slide, please. And you can see here, we were very careful and strategic in looking at the overall master plan and what the future calls in terms of how the sewer is being, that exists at the site, will be extended to other areas within the site and with a forward look. So it will be in the appropriate locations, looking ahead down the road to future phase implementation. It's absolutely necessary for phase 1, but it positions us well for future phases. And it's specifically the red dotted line on the left side of the slide. Next slide, please. And we received 4 bids for the project. They range from a high of 917 to a low of the 533,171. The bottom 2 bids were within 8,000 of each other, so that's always nice to see some closeness there. Obviously, the high one was significantly out of line relative to the initial 2, and the third one was somewhat in the middle. We are looking to, we are hopeful that you may be in a position to award the project this afternoon. With the holiday last week, we weren't able to schedule the briefing, and with the tight timeline, we're hoping to, again, just keep the project on track. So if there's a comfort level, we will have that on your agenda this afternoon. Otherwise, we can certainly extend if necessary. Our hope is that it would be awarded, and then that the notice to proceed and contract would follow that soon after, with a substantial completion goal by November of this year, and final by the end of November of this year for the sewer infrastructure portion. And this helps keep the overall project on track as well, with the timeline and completion in 2025. And I think that may be my last slide. Probably says any questions, or just the, oh yeah, the ask and what's before you this afternoon.
So I guess I have a question on, so if you're taking the $600,000 out for the sewer at this point, so I'm trying to understand, will you have a drain pit, or you're not going to?
It will eliminate the drain field for the existing, it'll serve several things out there, but
as a component of phase one, we have to eliminate the drain field in order to construct the synthetic turf fields.
Okay,
And so this will allow us to connect that building to sanitary sewer. It also will extend through and help benefit future locations for restrooms that are identified within the master plan. Or build out, it will connect to the maintenance facility.
so my question is, I guess, I'm not understanding for sure how. So if you're pulling out 600,000, because we didn't have enough funds, correct?
Well, we
I guess that's what
wanted
I'm
to
not-
have this completed before the end of the calendar year, so that's why we pulled it out from the progressive design build effort and have been moving forward with it so that we could have it completed before the end of the calendar year.
It doesn't have to be completed by the end of the year. We just have to have everything under contract for ARP.
We need it completed for the phasing of the artificial turf fields that the progressive design bid or build team is going to be doing. So timing of which
Okay.
we needed to
It's not
get
the
this
money
one.
That's the issue.
It wasn't the funding, yeah, the timing of doing the Yes. project Yes. would have been, could have been an opportunity for us to combine these in together, but the timing didn't allow that. So Doug needed to phase this one earlier, pull it out. It was gonna have to be done anyhow, so it would have
It's
been
still
part
gonna
of it.
get done.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Oh,
Okay.
yes, it's just the sequencing
Okay.
aligned
I
more
just was-
effectively with the remaining improvements that are on the way.
Okay.
And
I just was a little confused on that, because it seemed like as you were talking about pulling it out, then it was like, do we not have enough money and all of that, so, okay,
Yeah,
so,
yeah,
so.
specific to
so we'll get that.
sequencing,
Okay.
yes, yeah, absolutely, and it just,
Yeah,
Those first four fields, is that what you're talking about? The rest of?
well, in the one ahead of this, they show a red line over the 600,000 for the sewer.
yes, and
So
that's what this component is. We
So
had
that will
identified
get done.
early on. That is what is being done with this project, and it sequences it in advance of the fields, which will help expedite whatever we'll complete in that way. So it's very helpful to the project sequence.
Very good, thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you.
Else on any other questions? And I think we're happy to have it on the agenda this afternoon, so we can keep everything.
Thank you, that will be very, very helpful and for.
And it's already on there, right?
It is on there.
Or
Yes.
J.
Or Jay, okay, perfect,
Okay, great, well,
thank you.
that's all, thank you very much.
Okay. Then we get to finish up with Scott Chesney with a lot of items. See if you can go as quickly as Matt's here for. We're just teasing that we're gonna see if you can go as quickly as Matt's airport did, but
No.
his list of items.
We could probably go very quickly. with some tasks.
Maybe not.
But,
Changing locations of stop signs.
Yeah.
Maybe that is.
Well, welcome Scott and Jessica. Thank you.
Our first item is simply to let you know that we have interviewed and selected a communications manager for our comp plan effort for the next couple of years. Tom MacArthur, a longtime media guy here in the area, with a lot of experience. We were all helpful on that. The contract for his services will be before you next week. It is a total of $275,000 from now, July 1st through December, anticipated December of 2026. And so he will be taking on all of the responsibility for our public participation program and interactions. So we'll have both experienced guy in media and a voice that will be constant out there. I'll certainly play a role, but this will be a guy that can also do the arrangements, make logistics happen. So it will be a huge bonus, I guess, or a huge effort for our planning team. Because after trying to get planners to start doing this is really not the best use of their time either. So finding this approach is something we're really looking forward to. Anyway, like I said, that'll be before your in your legislative meeting next week.
You wanna ask? Nope. Okay. So so that sounds wonderful, yay. Great to have someone that can kind of shape the messaging, work with the media, help promote public engagement, activities and events and opportunities. Will that include social media, planning and implementation, as well as website? Will he have other people working under his contract to help in those areas if?
Yes, quick answer is yes. Right now, Martha Lou and Pat are handling our social media, but we will anticipate transitioning that into Tom's portfolio. We're also looking to acquire a web builder. We'll stick with the county architecture on the front page of planning, but when you click comprehensive plan, we're going to build an entirely new web page behind that that's totally interactive and will be a place where we can have that kind of discussion and facilitation. And so that he is at the moment recruiting and bringing back potential web builders to make that happen. And part of the reason for emphasizing the web is we're trying to drive as much of this communication as we can through our web, but also have that as the deliverable at the end. We do not anticipate printing a 400-page document this time. It's going to be an electronic comprehensive plan and done through the web portal of some kind. So we're starting from the very beginning to build that architecture.
Commissioner Jordan?
Maybe this is a silly question, but can you just give me a little background on Mr. MacArthur?
Well, there may be others here who know more of his background. He has been in the media for, I don't know, 50 years or so in and around Spokane County. He's worked with television stations. He was most recently also working with the Expo group on the 50th anniversary work on that. And he's been in his consulting role, he does a lot of work with nonprofits as well as communications. But my understanding is he's just an old veteran of Spokane media.
He's got a great media voice too.
He's done a lot of work with KSP. Yes.
Video just recently, yeah.
If you're from Spokane County, Commissioner Jordan, you'd know who Tom MacArthur is.
You
All right, very good.
Nicely played.
So as secretary for George Nevica.
Oh, that's right.
That's right. Yeah. As a quick follow-up on the website, so when do you anticipate having that built out? I know I've gotten some comments, it's hard to find right now how to click around and find out where you send your comments or how to.
We're reorganizing what we have now to make it more things on a single page. So when you click the comprehensive plan, right now you'll see everything on one page to click through. You won't have to click through 3 or 4 places to get there. That transition, I'm hopeful that, certainly by the end of the year and maybe by end of October, we've made a transition into the new system. But we're improving the one we have to make it easier. Next.
I'm gonna piggyback on that real quick, just while we're talking about experts, and I apologize, this isn't exactly on your agenda, but no action needed. We've been talking about bringing on a water law attorney to help consult in our office, just because it's a very special area of law. With the 2026 update and with the money now available, we'd like to bring on the prosecutor's office would like to bring on with the by the 2026 update, Mr. Tom McDonald with Cascadia Law. You might recall he helped us with purchasing water rights for the Little Spokane Water Bank. And he is willing to come on and able, he says, yes, it's the area of expertise that we need. The only thing that we will need from the board is kind of a head nod on whether you'd be willing to waive potential conflicts, because his firm represents Airway Heights on matters that include water supply and Avista on regulatory issues related to PCEs in the Spokane River. So they're willing to talk to those clients to make sure that they're willing to waive them before they do. So they want to make sure that the board didn't have any objections to waiving any conflicts. So just was looking kind of more for head nods, and if so, I can prepare a conflict waiver for you guys to execute later. Unless you have any objections to that.
I guess my question is he working on those himself? Or
He is
someone
not.
that's in the firm?
It's someone else in the firm, so they would be, separate. Tom McDonald, which is Cascade, yes.
Well, what would be some of the plan related?
Matters that you.
Yeah,
So
would be kind of, would it be more around the water system plan and the water, or would it be more around
it'd be more around if
river
there
flow or?
it could be a number of different things. One thing that it might be around is, for example, if there is a water purveyor who does not want to build out the way that we see development going. So say Whitworth Water doesn't want to, their plan doesn't extend to the north, and that's where we see development going. He could help us with ways that we could work with Whitworth Water to either incentivize that or what our options are to get some other provider. Or Airway Heights, for example, that has some issues, as Commissioner French knows, with water purveying. So if there are other options for creative ways that we might be able to get different water systems in different places or get water purveyors to provide water where they might otherwise be reluctant to provide them. But we don't know all of the tools in that toolbox because it's such a special area, and Mr. McDonald has more of an expertise. So he would help us with options. So with that, I'll go ahead and prepare a waiver, and then we'll bring it back before the board for execution. For the other waivers. Next.
A quick question, Scott, is this anticipated to be covered under your consulting dollars that have been set for the comp plan update? Okay, thank you.
Our next item is one you've seen before, your predecessors have seen before. It's been back several times. It is a comp plan amendment, 0416. Next slide, please. And the history of this has been back through the Growth Management Hearings Board. It was remanded for reconsideration. Next slide, please. It was then brought through the Planning Commission again. The applicant was asked to update their information, do additional traffic studies, do a habitat management program. They have done that and complied with that. The resulting analysis did not change our findings of SEPA mitigation. There was no need to redo the SEPA. And then most recently, there was an omission in describing critical areas or really hazardous soils on the site that had a minor role in that. We went back and looked at that and again confirmed that that did not change our initial determination. Next slide, please. The Planning Commission held another public hearing and they affirmed their recommendation to you with the recommendation that you affirm your previous decision to support this. You'll be receiving that Planning Commission recommendation next week and be asked to consider it the following. When that is done, we will be, legal counsel will be taking that to the Growth Management Hearings Board for their reconsideration with one of two possible outcomes. One is they agree, and this would be the last major piece in our becoming compliant again with the Growth Management Act. If they still find some fault, it's likely we will bring it back to you and have the recommendation to rescind this in favor of reconsidering it in 26. So there is an end in sight for this particular project.
Just a few things to add, just briefly, and make it super clear, you know, you already covered this, Scott. So we did have the applicant do a full geohazard study, and that was on everything, erodible soils, any deposits, landslide, things like that. And it came back that there, while some geohazards were identified on the site, that they were, the consultant felt that it was mitigatable at the time of development. So those were identified and called out. And then same thing with the habitat study. There was, I believe in there, they indicated that there wasn't any habitat that was of concern, but that a second look would be necessary at the time of development, at which point they would need to make sure that they mitigate at that point. The other thing is, I don't think you mentioned this, but I believe it was unanimous, right? There was all the PC, the planning commission recommended unanimously to affirm, so in case that's important. And then when it does, so the board will receive and set this for consideration next week, and then you would consider it that following week, and your options will be again to affirm or rescind. And then coincidentally, the growth management hearings board also set this for a status report the same week. So we'll be reporting whatever the board's result is. I have been in touch with FutureWise. They're not interested in settling the matter, but they are interested in setting it for compliance hearings. So that sounds like where we will be going.
So was the remand just based upon geological analysis?
Essentially, yes, it was a CEPA based on that.
But some habitat and some road related things, and that's why we have them do the studies, just to make sure our CEPA was good.
And going back to the original part was also the deficiency of the county's capital facilities plan, that this couldn't be tied to that point. So that was fixed a year ago, and now we're fixing these other pieces.
And importantly, that's the only part that the GMHB ruled on was the comprehensive plan portion. They have not yet ruled on the CEPA determinations. They ruled on summary judgment. So when we go back before then, we'll have these extra studies to support our CEPA determination.
Commissioner Jordan.
Can you say more about what that status hearing or compliance hearing would entail if FutureWise is not in a position to settle the matter now? Are they asserting that it's still out of compliance? Or just help me understand the dynamics with that particular hearing and the litigation posture.
Sure. So the growth management hearings board identified several things at summary judgment that they felt the board had not considered as far as compliance with the comprehensive plan. So when we go back before the growth management hearings board, the question will be, are the things that they identified in their findings of fact, and these were the ones such as whether it's near commercial areas, whether it's on a arterial, things like that, whether we have fixed the things that they identified. And then the other thing is it'll go back and we'll have the original issues raised by FutureWise, one of which was that they felt we needed to do a larger CEPA study, that we needed to do an EIS in essence. But part of what they were arguing was that we hadn't adequately addressed the road issues and the habitat. They argued that there was habitat that was an open space and I think a habitat thoroughfare corridor,
wildlife corridor,
and then also the geohazard areas. So we'll be arguing for the first time, even though it was raised years ago, we'll be arguing for the first time whether the CEPA analysis was adequate. So basically just re-arguing the same things we argued before: compliance with the comprehensive plan, CEPA analysis.
And Commissioner Jordan, FutureWise, one of their latest or their most recent comments delivered to the planning commission was simply a disagreement that the multifamily should be endorsed in this low density area. We disagreed with their assertion because first off, our comprehensive plan does call for the insertion of limited multifamily in single family areas as a matter of diversifying the housing stock. And secondly, the proximity to Whitworth University alone suggests that a more dense housing product is easily supported in this area. And then finally, their argument of that it should remain as single family low density zoning really doesn't pass the pencil check of a project on a complicated site with the power lines. Those additions and those mitigations are much more easily handled in a commercial structure of multifamily than it would be to try to shoehorn 40 single family homes into that site. So there were a number of reasons that we could professionally disagree with FutureWise, but their last remaining concern was simply that we shouldn't be putting multifamily here at all. So that, again, that'll be before you in 2 weeks, and then we carry that forward. Our Next item is an update on the requested comp plan amendment from Cheney that would involve a land swap. We do, I think we have a map for you to show you kind of where this is, but essentially Cheney wants to build on the north side of the city. They proposed a 10-acre swap from some of their UGA lands that are on the southeast side, notably across the railroad tracks and in areas that's been undeveloped since the beginning of GMA. You can see the hatched area there on the large one on the southeast side and a smaller existing UGA on the north. The proposed UGA would be extended on that north peninsula of Cheney's area. This was not allowed by current law. In the last legislative session, Senator Short sponsored a bill that would allow these swaps to take place on an annual cycle instead of part of their 10-year or 5-year cycles. That bill was ultimately adopted, but not before an 11th hour addition to that said you can swap UGA lands as long as you had two conditions. One, you can't increase the overall acreage of the urban growth area. And more importantly, you cannot increase the development capacity of the urban growth area. That second part of that is the fatal flaw on the Cheney proposal, because the idea of swapping some of that land on the southeast side, which is rural traditional, rural conservation, for a developable land on the north side would increase the development capacity. The only, so an example, if the rural traditional lands were 1 unit per 10 acres or 1 unit per 20 acres, and you move 10 acres of that to the north side, you could build one home. And clearly they want to build something at 4, 5, 6 units an acre, typical low density residential development. The only way to do that under the current law is to find 10 acres somewhere else in the overall UGA that is currently zoned low density residential and move it from wherever that spot is to Cheney. That would, the net effect would be taking that land out of, say, the Valley UGA or the North Metro UGA or the West Valley Grandview Thorpe UGA and moving it down here. That's not a good planning decision, frankly, and probably not politically viable in any case. So that said, there's no legal path to a solution for Cheney now. However, there's also no question that we will be able to fix this and accommodate that as part of the 2026 update as we reassess the UGA as a whole. So there's a solution, it's just an extra year away.
Commissioner Jordan, did you raise your hand?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is there a definition of development capacity in that RCW? Is it literally just number of units? Is there any way to kind of look at that definition in a way that would work to make this happen?
They did not define it, and that was something that I mentioned when it was being adopted. But the intent behind it, it was introduced by FutureWise, and the intent behind it was to stymie exactly what we're trying to do. So, I mean, the only way that you can interpret it logically is either that it's like for like or possibility for possibility. And in the case of Cheney, what they have is rural designations in the south. And when you bring it in the UGA, you have to have urban designations. So anytime you go from a rural to, it's going to increase the development capacity. I don't know of a way that we could define it that would do that.
Isn't this pretty much the same situation we ran into with Airway Heights and the ORV park?
Yes.
I mean, it's not as though we haven't tried to fight this fight before. It's so here we are again.
So
Same
yeah,
challenge.
it's frustrating because I thought, I guess I understood that when the senator introduced the changes to fix the land swap language, which was impossible to use prior to this year, you're saying it still does not
So what,
fix.
yes,
the-
so
the
the
challenge.
the language that was introduced through 1181, which was the original one that would ended up being limited to 10 years, was the revised urban growth area may not result in an increase in the total surface areas of the urban growth area or areas. When Senator Short introduced the original bill that ended up being law this year, the original language said the revised urban growth area may not result in an increase in the total surface areas of the urban growth area or areas. Future wise added the language or development capacity. So now it reads, would not result in a net increase in the total acreage or development capacity in the urban growth area or areas. So that was not in the original language that ended up being limited to every 10 years. It was not in the original language that Senator Short introduced, but it was amended through committees. And that exact language was added by FutureWise, and it was intended to capture exactly this. In areas that had what FutureWise deemed as oversized UGAs that were not able to be developed because either they had an overlay that reduced the development capacity, such as
Air Force.
yeah, JLUs or some other, limitation. Or because in our case, it was designated rural, it prevents us from using that land, from using unusable land and making it usable. And their intent in part was basically to say, well, if it's not usable, it shouldn't have been in the UGA in the first place. You should just remove it, not move it elsewhere. And so that's why they added that language. And we did mention to Wasack that would make it unusable in Spokane County.
Yeah, we did at the LSC.
Yeah.
Have this conversation about the change, the last minute change. And we opposed it, but it got adopted anyway. Thank you, FutureWise.
Yeah. So
Send your thank yous to them.
So would there be any other opportunity for Cheney to take a larger removal area then? Could you say, well, so I'm trying to understand, is it about the number of units?
both, it can't increase the total acreage and it can't increase the development
Okay.
capacity. So it basically has to be like for like. So you need 10 acres of LDR for 10 acres of LDR. And then arguably, they would argue you can't have a limitation like JLUs that would have limited it, or some like wetlands that would have otherwise restricted the development. It has to have the same potential. And the likelihood of that at this late stage is incredibly unlikely. And then you'd also have to ask yourself, if you did take that from someone, is it a taking? Because you've taken someone else's potential ability to develop.
So what's the request today? What are you asking us to do?
Oh, sorry, it wasn't us. I believe Commissioners Jordan and Waldrop asked that this be
Well,
added.
I
for-
think the mayor is zooming in, the mayor, Cheney, and city council members were they sent a letter asking for us to consider this land swap in this year's cycle of,
Did we get that? I didn't get that.
No.
no, I
No.
think it was sent to the planning
We
department.
got that and we replied to that early on. We then had a conversation with their planner, Brett Lucas, about this situation that we're in and where we could go and where we couldn't go. And I don't know that information fully filtered through others in Cheney, so I think that's why the request was to bring it back here.
And I did have a chance to speak with Cheney's city attorney this morning and sent him the emails and the explanation and the bill language that was problematic for us. So I think he's understands a little better now, and I'll continue to work with him on what the problematic language is for this year at least. The 2026 update again is different, so.
And I did have a conversation with the mayor yesterday, because I saw it on our agenda and I'm wondering, where is it coming from? And he indicated that, it's being pursued by past county commissioners with the help of my two fellow seatmates, and it would have been professional courtesy to at least let me know that you were working on this as opposed to, bringing this forward without even the courtesy of letting me know. But the challenge here is articulated by our attorney, and planning director is a fight that we've been fighting for years. And so it's unfortunate that, you know, we're spending more time on a fight that we've already fought.
I wanted to get an explanation about why the land swap language wasn't fixed. And I thought it would be good to have that in a public meeting so that everybody was on the same page.
Again, it's just professional courtesy. Let me know that you're working in my district. That's just professional courtesy. When I get a constituent in Commissioner Cooney's district or Commissioner Kearns' district, I go to them first before I ever follow up on it to get their permission to respond to that thing. It's just professional courtesy. I mean, it's nothing more than that.
No, and I think I got an email that I just forwarded to you, to say, I don't think we can do this and like. So.
Yeah, and we have been talking to G, so no action needed, but that's just kind of the update on where the status is and kind of why the law has stymied us at this point, despite our best efforts.
Yeah, that's what I thought when I got the email, I just sent it to you because I didn't think we could do this. And the one we did for Central Valley a few years ago was unique because it wasn't changing anything. It was just the same for the same.
Yeah.
And Central Valley owned all.
Yeah,
So it was within their, what they owned. It was not changing any zoning.
Yeah.
It was the same zoning, for the same zoning, and it just, part of their property was within the UGA, part of it was not.
and what was somewhat sadly, before 1181 came along, which was the original change, the law was silent on this, so I think a lot of people presumed we could do it. And we actually, in our settlement agreement with FutureWise, we were allowed to do it, and it was just acreage for acreage. But when 1181 came along, in an attempt to fix it, it actually ended up superseding our agreement and actually prevented us suddenly from doing this thing that we had been doing. So this is one of those situations where the cure was actually worse than the illness, so. Unfortunately.
The patient still died.
Exactly. Our best efforts actually were terrible, so, yeah.
When we come back to talk with you next week for our quarterly comp plan briefing discussion, a lot of that's going to be on the land capacity analysis, where we're standing with the urban growth areas and how that process will play out over the rest of the year. So we'll have a chance to dig into this on the following Monday. Our last item is a request to initiate a zoning text amendment. This is a constituent request. Next slide, please. Came through Commissioner Cooney's office. And it's looking at the viability of creating what started out in the initiation request is to do rural traditional events or temporary uses, much as they're done in small tract ag, which is the Green Bluff example for weddings and wedding venues. Next slide, please. Into rural traditional. So currently, they have to be actively farmed. They have to be in agriculture. It's generally put under agricultural marketing uses is the title that fits into our zoning code. Next slide, please. What we're considering is changing that to allow for the rural traditional zone to accommodate this. And the model, of course, is the same small venues as is used in small tract ag. And that's the part that we would be taking back to study. Next slide, please. And it would potentially, it could be much the same use kind of permit. There's also been some discussion at the Planning Commission as to whether or not this should be a conditional use permit that would take it away from being in a specific zone and would be allowed in other places, but with a set of more specific issues. Those are two things we'll be studying and bringing back to the Planning Commission for public comment. Next slide, please. And we've generally seen some of these some of these criteria are what have been discussed so far. Limited hours, limited in terms of the year, times of day, the owner of the property, and this is one that's somewhat contentious. The owner must live on the property. There's some discussion that that may not be desirable. but we wanted to have a condition that said the owner must be at least responsible for the project. They can't simply buy a piece of land and lease it to an entertainment group and divest themselves of responsibility. There was some discussion of whether amplified music should be allowed in this version as opposed to bands and things that are in a more traditional sense. And so those are some of the topics we'll be looking at. In this version, it would be a limited use in rural traditional. Those limitations would be some version of what you see on the screen. Like I said, we'll also be looking at a conditional use process. Next slide, please. And this is kind of a way of showing you the scope of what this means as a zoning text amendment. The slide on the left is their small tract ag zoning. You can see the Green Bluff cluster there. And if this same use was allowed in rural traditional, it would be on the slide on the right. It would be allowed in each of those shaded areas. So the extent to which this would be used in the county would be significantly increased. So that's also a consideration for the CUP model, which might limit it in a different way. Now we've heard from the applicant. The applicant has a lot of support from their neighbors, from others for doing this. We think this is probably a really interesting and unique idea for the county if we could figure out the best way to protect existing values. The rural traditional has many lots that are under 10 acres, and so the spillover to neighbors can be significant on this. And we also recognize, though, that for some of those that are in either small ag or small business, nursery business like this particular applicant, having this available to them may let them keep their property in economic conditions that are otherwise struggling. It provides another income source. So it has a lot of advantages if we can also protect the unintended consequences of what might happen around it. And so we're really looking at this with a positive eye, but trying to make sure it's that we're looking at those unintended consequences.
Yeah, and so I had a constituent come to me that has a nursery business and they don't live on the property, but they're, but it's hard to make it viable without doing some other things to keep their business, and keep people coming to it. And so it's, so it's kind of one of those, it's allowed in Green Bluff, they have certain, restrictions up there, but it's, there's a lot of people in the South County that don't want to go to Green Bluff for events,
They're missing out.
Yeah, they're really missing out.
So, I mean, I just think having that ability for people to be able to do it in other parts of the county would be good. And a lot of people are going to Idaho because they have a lot of those wedding venues over in Idaho. And we're not allowing it. And so we're missing out on some of those economic opportunities here in Spokane County when they can just go over there for some of these venues. So, I see, and the constituent, I mean, they really do. I've talked to a lot of the neighbors around it and they love it because they see it as kind of a community gathering place too, because they'll do a food truck on a weekend and, bring the community. So they really do see it and it's been very respectful. And so it's that balance of you've got a respectful owner wanting to do these things versus if you have someone who's not. And so I think that's what the planning commission is, taking up right now.
Yeah, that's precisely it. It's one of the, should it be somebody that has an existing business on a site that is trying to maximize that, or should it be more flexible and say you could in fact build this business on a site? And that does open up a legal issue that Jessica's been tracking, and that is we, under GMA, we're obligated to protect our resource lands, our ag lands in a very significant manner. There's been some case, I don't know, the case is slightly challenging that you're now creating a business in an ag area and that shouldn't be allowed. If you're, how's that preserving ag? You're actually taking ag out of production potentially. And so she is tracking that legal case and hopefully we'll have some direction from the courts as this works its way through our analysis.
Commissioner French.
So is that opinion being offered up by somebody that thinks that beef actually comes from the grocery store, not the ranch? No, when we were doing the whole thing with Green Bluff, it was about providing another source of revenue so that we could, so that those small farm operations would remain viable. And so, it took a long time to get to there. And, but the other challenge that we encountered when we were dealing with the Green Bluff issue is fire protection. Whenever you have an event that has 4 walls, then you got to meet the building code requirements with regard to fire protection. And that became another significant challenge for us. And we actually ended up having to go, refresh me, to the fire districts and get some relief from the fire districts on the fire flow requirements because they don't have enough water supply on Green Bluff to meet the fire flow requirements.
That was it. It was.
No, that was Jim.
That was like, that was before my time.
Yeah, no, that was Jim, and it was, I mean, the commissioner that was, who was really pushing it was Todd Milkey and stuff, and so there's a long history that got us to that, but I agree with you. I mean, some of these farming operations, they need another source of income just to remain viable. It will be interesting to see how the conversation evolves with regard to, I think on Green Bluff, all of the operations have the owners on the property. And so that will be an interesting conversation.
So like the Glenrose area that has kind of some smaller tract farm, is it allowed? What happens at Green Bluff, is that allowed in the Glenrose area?
No, that's what we're looking at.
Okay,
It's off the old police highway.
so like Winescape, the winery up there, been there a few times. No, they can't do any events.
Not that I know of.
Okay.
Yeah, so agritourism is kind of what is like the name that's really coming up, and what you'll find is it's the new hot button issue for FutureWise and folks like that, where they go after agritourism as either being contrary to the GMA, but more often SEPA issues, so roads, fire escapes, sanitation, things like that. So we'll just have to be very diligent in our SEPA review to make sure that we, look at all of those things and their viability, and that it doesn't affect the GMA or any SEPA issues or any concurrency issues. And there have been some successful adoptions of permitting issues that do not offend those. I believe King County passed one, so we're looking at those and other folks that have been successful in their agritourism.
That's what I was gonna ask, if there's any models like down in Benton County or Yakima with all the wineries and such, but those
Yeah,
are larger
mostly-
tract farms. right?
Mostly on the west side through the valley, the Puyallup area, those in that area have had some, I think Snoqualmie and those areas that they have a lot of agritourism, wineries, things like that we're looking
We
at.
just want to make it so people have those opportunities here.
Yeah, I think it's good to look at.
And not. Pat, I see you raised your hand.
I was just gonna add Skagit Valley, which is another agritourism center, starting in Conway and heading all the way north for their Tulip Festival and others. If you ever get a chance to go over there and see what they've developed, it's probably 10 times the size of Green Bluff, and it's how they've avoided paving over all of the farmland and saving farmland as the commissioners have been talking about, making it economically viable. So another good example to look at.
So the action before you will be to receive the planning commission's recommendation next week and then consider, and this is just the initiation step. This is not approving the final product at all. It's saying, yes, go forth and study it and bring it back a recommendation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all.
Okay, that's gonna take us to miscellaneous, which looks like we have a. That's. Oh, sorry, really good. Okay, so Josh, go ahead and do yours.
Yeah, so yesterday brought up the situation with our the encampments and our County Code there, spoke with Sheriff Knowles. He said he did have a recommendation of something that he would recommend that we take out. Spoke with Mr. Anderson. 6.15.080 enforcement suspended is the clause in county code that says enforcement of this chapter shall be suspended anytime there is no space available in homeless shelters located in Spokane County. That was the whole crux of the lawsuit that the Supreme Court ruled on. So the Sheriff Knowles recommended we strike that from the code, which I think makes sense because that was the whole, that was put in there because of the Martin v. Boise, but now that has been handled. That's what, that would be, that was his recommendation of how to clean it up and tighten up the language there.
So that, would we just have you bring that forward as a?
I certainly can, and or the sheriff's office and, but yeah, that's, if that's what the board wants to do, that's a pretty quick, code revision to do. Martin v. Boise was squarely overturned, so that's no longer a specific legal requirement coming out of the Supreme Court at this point. You know, we'll see kind of where it goes from here. There may be other, depending on what happens next, but I don't imagine that this issue is done with litigation, but certainly as the law stands now, yeah, that is not a requirement at this point in time.
When we talk to the sheriff's office to have them initiate that change and have the change brought forward. Sure. And then we can be here. Okay. Martha Lou, you have.
Yes, good morning. The communications office has a draft of an events protocol for your consideration. I sent it around to your assistants yesterday, and it would be appreciated if you would look it over, let us know if you have questions or changes.
I have not had time to look at it, so maybe we can have a chance to look at it and get back to you.
Absolutely.
At a different time, and I know we're getting late in the day here, so.
And Pat would like to join us.
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. Just wanted to bring it to your attention. The other thing that Martha Lou and I have been discussing is we have a number of county, board forward events coming up this fall. And so this is just a precursor to probably a strategic planning meeting where we can talk about it a little bit further. On the press and media front, you should have all seen the story in the clips today about your upcoming consideration of the juvenile justice sales tax. And so appreciate working with several of you to get comment. And I've been told that the jail capacity story has kind of been put on hold. There's going to be broken apart into a series of stories. I've brought to the board's attention a few times. It stemmed from Mike Sparber's presentation several weeks ago. It's an ongoing story. Happy to talk with any of you individually about that. Should be hearing more from the reporter this week on what it could look like, what potential news pegs might be. But those have been two of the bigger ones. All of our standard announcements went out last week and got decent coverage on the fireworks in particular, which will continue to be an ongoing issue during this heat spell and dry weather. I know we've also had a few requests to share different resources that are available in the community. I haven't heard any individual commissioners bring that up as something for full board discussion, but just be aware we've worked with community and housing and community development to make some of those resources available and to share and point people to existing resources rather than kind of recreate the wheel on our site, since many of those services are provided by nonprofits or other jurisdictions and localities. SRHD is a great place to point people for that, and that's what we'll be doing. The American Red Cross has got some guidance out as well that's helpful. And so there is a fair amount that we're seeing in the media about how people can protect themselves during inclement weather. So just wanted to raise that as well.
Thank you. Okay, so yeah, so maybe let's add this to strategic planning meeting in the future, your future. And then is there anything else? Okay, so then at the 2 o'clock today, we do have an executive session after the 2 o'clock. So just so everyone's aware. That, how long do you think that's gonna take?
I'm thinking maybe 20.
Okay. And we do have one public hearing, but shouldn't be long. So. So this way we'll see everybody back for the 2 o'clock, since there's no other business to come before us. So thank you all for joining today, and we'll see you at 2 o'clock.